Hi, everyone. First of all, welcome. Today, we're exploring the fascinating scene of how our mind works with our beloved Reuben Lowe. Reuben is a mindfulness teacher and is also founder of Mindful Creation and the nonprofit Act on It. And Reuben's work spans globally wellness platforms and one of the largest health clinics in the Southern Hemisphere. And today we're diving into his course, Never Mind Your Mind, where we'll unpack some neuroscience behind not taking our thoughts so seriously, especially the default mode network, the part of your brain behind all that mental chatter. Whether you're new to meditation or a long-time practitioner, you'll get practical tools, real-time exercises, and insights you can use right away. So, first of all, welcome, Reuben.
Thank you so much. What a lovely intro that was. The
Right?
beloved. I loved it. Thank you.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you here today joining us. So, what I would like to start with is to know for 11 years ago, you had a vision about impacting a million lives. What sparked that vision?
I heard somewhere, I can't remember now, but I've heard it before that if a million people can be more conscious on the planet, it has a massive effect, especially with the technology that we've got nowadays, to have a knock-on effect to therefore increase the consciousness in the planet. And so it was just something I was like, oh, that's a nice goal to aim for. So it's not like I'm keeping count. I mean, I know kind of roughly how many listens I get a day and things like that, but it's just this thing of I want to make a difference in people's lives. And when I say a difference, it's what I like to say, like my tagline is be part of the change. And what I like to say to people, like on the mindfulness app right now, when we have our events there, is like, you are already part of the change. You're already part of the change. You're listening to, you're drawing on resources on the mindfulness app, and they can help with a whole range of things, whether it's enhancing meaningful connection, gratitude, setting intention in the day, soothing the nervous system, beautiful things, but more as well, getting through tough times, unhooking from unhelpful thoughts, self-compassion. The list goes on, and we've got all these resources on the mindfulness app. And so really this is what I like to do, and I just feel really blessed because I've been, teaching mindfulness and guiding people in group circles every work day that I do at the clinic, and it's not just about the meditation. It's not just like, it's phenomenal what mindfulness meditation can do for us, but when we can start relating to ourselves differently, when we can start holding ourselves lightly when we're going through tough times and meeting ourselves, showing up for ourselves. And I'm talking now particularly tough times. On the mindfulness app, we've got the course This Tough Life. It's disengaging from the automatic and engaging with intentional showing up for ourselves, whether that's like validating self-talk or whatever it might be. So, I went down the route just then of like tough times because that's one of my passions. But being part of the change is all of those things that I mentioned before. Where it's not the default mode of the mind for gratitude. It's not the default mode of the mind for self-compassion. It's not the default mode of the mind for meaningful connection. Our minds want us to be occupied with the thoughts they give us. And obviously we're going to talk about this with the default mode network. And so what this is about is the fact that when we do draw on these resources, are we are transforming ourselves. And I know that sounds, however it might sound a bit kind of cliche, but that's what's happening, because when we put a practice into practice, whether it's soothing the nervous system, something to help us get through tough times, maybe some self-compassion or whatever, we are not just getting the benefits in the very moment that we practice it, we're benefiting our future selves. And
Mhm.
so all of those examples, whatever you want to choose, and most people have probably practiced a little bit of everything, right? Because it's all there on the app that we've got. So you are part of the change. You are part of the change. You are part of the change. And I also want to say another thing as well. We, as human beings, we disconnect. We disconnect. We might disconnect from people. We might disconnect from our practice. We might disconnect from things in the external world. But we also disconnect from ourselves, and in the throes of tough times, or just caught up in the hectic nature of the busyness of the world, we disconnect so that we can reconnect. And I'm saying
Mm.
this because, as I've been talking about, you are part of the change, and saying that, I know what the mind does, right? We know what the mind does. It likes to judge and evaluate and compare and contrast. So it'll go, oh, well, you're not really part of the change because look at the way you reacted to your partner yesterday, and you're such a hypocrite or whatever, right? And this is what I mean by disconnecting so we can reconnect. So whatever tools we can have to gently get back on track again, that's what it's about. That's what it's about.
I love how you're putting disconnect to reconnect because it makes it more human because everyone disconnects all the time.
All the
But
time, all the
yeah,
time. And when we're
yeah.
going through a tough time, we disconnect for longer, and we get so caught up, as if it wasn't bad enough, the things that happen in the external world to us. And I don't mean to be morbid, but like, as Helen Keller's quote says, although the world is full of suffering, it's also full of the overcoming of it, right? So it's part of the human condition. When we look at Instagram and things like that, sometimes we can think that people have got the better lives. They're doing so much better. They're happy all the time. Everyone is going through something that is causing them some kind of concern, to a greater or lesser extent, of course. And so, yeah, disconnecting
Yeah.
so that we can reconnect again, however that may be.
Yes, thank you. That's a beautiful way of putting it, and easy to understand. And also, it makes you feel that you can change and that it's a part of it to, yeah,
Yeah.
disconnect to reconnect.
Because what it does is it normalizes it. Because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, when we disconnect, the mind comes in and starts judging the fact that we've disconnected. So we stay disconnected, and we give ourselves a hard time. Or should I say, the mind gives us a hard time, and we buy into those thoughts and believe, oh, what's the point? I've just done this. There's no point in getting, I can't do my practice anymore, or whatever. I've lost it. And I've lost my spirituality, or whatever it is that we feel we've disconnected from, or I've lost my sense of self because I'm going through such a hard time at the moment. My nervous system's so upregulated. So there's so many different ways, and that's what that's about. Like, being okay with, I'm disconnecting, and in the okayness of being not okay, right? So being okay with not being okay helps us gently get back on track again.
Mm-hmm. Mm, beautiful. That's yeah, that moves us along a little bit, but we're going to talk about the default mode network and what that is. But could you start with, you already begun, but could you start explaining a little bit about what the mind is and what the default mode network is and why it's helpful for us to understand?
Yeah, definitely. So, like, let's keep it really simple, because I like things. I like things simple. I really do. I've sat in so many too many like uh, you know webinars, or gone to these conferences, and things seem really complicated. And I don't know whether it's me, but I kind of like take it on and then think I need to know all of this, and then it will be okay. And actually, some of these things that seem complicated are quite simple. Anyway, I digress. So in terms of like the mind, let's keep it simple. Most scientists generally agree, as Dan Siegel, neuroscientist Dan Siegel says, most scientists agree that the mind is a process of energy and information, right? So in kind of other terms, it's the events in our heads, right? And they could be pictures, streams of words, like almost like an audio recording, from words in our heads, right? So in this context, and in some other context, like Dan Siegel in his book, which is called Mind Sight, talks about mind sight. It's the capacity we have to notice our mind, right? So in terms of that, we have this amazing capacity to notice, to step into ourselves. Like other descriptions of this, there are many. Some of the listeners here will have heard of some of these. There's like the observing self, the noticing self, the silent witness, the inner eye, essence, right? And here's the thing, they all mean the same thing. It's our consciousness, our consciousness. And when we ask the simple question, what am I noticing? What am I noticing? We step back. And so, in terms of the mind, it's like, there are my thoughts. That's my mind. My mind is doing its thing. And here I am noticing those. And then I get hooked. And when I'm hooked, I'm doing this thing kind of with the visual here, with the hands around my head. When I get hooked, I'm looking from my thoughts. So I've identified with the mind. I'm looking from my thoughts. They color my reality. And then when I say, what am I noticing? Or something along those lines, when we notice, we step out of that and we see our thoughts instead of be our thoughts. We're looking, instead of looking from our thoughts, we're looking at our thoughts instead of from our thoughts, in other words. However, whichever way of kind of that level of describing you resonate with, right? So the mind, and then the default mode network is interesting, and I touch on it in Never Mind Your Mind, and then we dive into it in day 4 of the Foundations course, because Kelly McGonigal, who's a health psychologist and lecturer at Stanford University, has really kind of given us a visual of what the default mode network looks like. So let's keep it simple. We're okay with that notion of there's me, my awareness, and then there's what passes through my head, like my mind, my thoughts, right? So the default mode network is the judging, analyzing, worrying, replaying events in our head. In other words, it's automatic thoughts. So around 90 to 95% of the thoughts that we have are automatic. And the default mode network is responsible for a large part of those. So if you like stats, it's thought that it's around 50 to 80% of the automatic thoughts are the default mode network. So they're automatic thoughts, default meaning automatic. It goes into a mode. The mode is problem solving. Okay, so what this means in simple terms is the default mode network is automatic thoughts that are problem solving. And 50 to 80% of the time that it's in operation, right? Now,
That's a big impact on your mode, or your general mode, I guess. Your default mode. How you're
yeah,
feeling.
interestingly, so first we'll dive into that, but first off, the default mode network, it happens when we are resting or we're doing tasks that are so automatic that we don't need to think about it. So what this means is when you might have been task focused on something, and then you get home and you rest on the sofa, put your feet up. And if you don't drop off to sleep, right, because you might not feel tired, your mind will go into the default mode network. So it's automatic thoughts, right? So either when we're resting or when we're doing automatic tasks, right? Now, Kelly McGonigal, who I mentioned earlier, the health psychologist from Stanford University, has studied the default mode network. So she studied the 50 to 80% of the automatic thoughts that we have when we're either resting or doing things automatically. And when I say things automatically, I mean like having a shower, brushing your teeth, driving a car, riding a bike, something like that, right? Now, I don't know about you, but I've noticed since knowing this material that when I go into the shower, I go straight up into rumination. And then I'm like, wow, I've obviously been doing this for a long time, until I started to know about this material, and then I catch myself and go, ah, that's the default mode network. And here's the thing. So again, the automatic thoughts, 50 to 80% of the time when we're resting or doing things automatically, right? They are, number one, problem focused, right? So you could say pessimistic. And in fact, Kelly McGonigal does say that. Number one, pessimistic or problem focused. Number two, they're persistent. Okay. Now, in terms of the research she did, she was like, right, well, I want to know, let's kind of, instead of just go, well, it's just these automatic thoughts that are problem focused, what what about the categories? And this is what I very like nice and briefly cover in Never Mind Your Mind, because it helps us normalize these thoughts that we have, these unhelpful thoughts that we have. It helps us actually go, oh, that's just my mind. It's the default mode network doing its thing.
Hmm.
So, as Kelly McGonigal says, remember the default mode network, problem focused, in other words, pessimistic and persistent. And I'll come on to why it's pessimistic in a bit. But what I want to give you now is 4 categories in terms of breaking down the default mode network. So number one, what Kelly McGonigal found is number one is that it's like there's a commenting on the present moment. So it's thoughts about the present moment, commenting on the present moment. Remember what I said before, as though it's like, this is a problem, this could be fixed, that could be better, blah, 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 right? Number one, commenting on the present moment. Number two, what she calls time travel. This is, again, like with the problem focused and persistent, time travel is going back into the past to rehash old stuff, what I said, what they said, what happened, right? Through the lens of things, it should have been better. I could have said that or whatever, right? Into the past, or projecting the future, imagining the future through the lens of it's going to be, look out for the problems, what might happen. Oh, this could happen, that could happen, right? So that's number two, category number two, time travel. So number one, commenting on the present. Number two, time travel. Now, number three is what she calls self-referential processing. Now, we could just say thoughts about self. And I did actually contact Kelly McGonigal about this, and she said you can say thoughts about self as long as you remind people that it's pessimistic and it's persistent, right? So self-referential processing. I am the sort of person, I like this, I don't like that, I could have done that better. Thoughts about self, right? That's number three, self-referential processing. So we've got one more category, and this is number 4, and this is social cognition. So thoughts about others, right? Thoughts about others in and also in relation to self. They look like this. I like that. I don't quite like that. I prefer to be associated like this and whatever, right?
Mm.
So commenting on the now, if we wanted to put it simply, commenting on the now, commenting on the past and future, thoughts about self and thoughts about others. When we rest or we're doing automatic things, the likelihood is we'll be up in the default mode network, and it's not helpful. Most of the time, it's actually not helpful. And in Never Mind Your Mind, the course, whether people are starting with the 5-day Never Mind Your Mind micro course or the full foundations course, which is just called Never Mind Your Mind, we also tap into evolutionary science, and contextual psychology does this, which is the science, the 40 years of science that acceptance commitment therapy sits on, and it draws on evolutionary science, because it's basically saying, look, we have thousands of thoughts a day. The conscious thoughts that we have around over 6,000 a day, right? And some of the
Wow.
ones that are not quite conscious, it goes into the tens of thousands, right? So 6,000 a day, over 6,000 a day, which is a lot, right? And 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 most of those are actually not helpful in this modern world today. Most of them, because it's judging, evaluating, comparing, contrasting. It's commenting on the present, time traveling in the past and the future through the lens of things not quite good enough. It could have been better like this, blah, blah, blah. What's the future going to be like? Oh, this might happen, that might happen. Or the self or others, right? So it's it's normal. It's normal. And what this means is we can it helps lighten the load. It helps us recognize this is part of the human condition. Ties in with that quote I said earlier. Although the world is full of suffering, it's full of suffering because we all have human minds, and the default mode of us dealing with hardship and struggle, difficult thoughts and feelings is one of resistance. And what we resist persists. What we fight, we strengthen. So it ties in with this, and what this does is these beautiful insights to help us recognize this is part of the human condition. I don't have to take my thoughts so seriously. I am not my thoughts unless I choose them. And there's an opportunity as well, which kind of what we're doing is we're looking and we're noticing and we're actually saying, this is what my mind is doing. And in Never Mind Your Mind, we break it down like Dr. Russ Harris has said, when we look at the functions of our automatic thoughts, it boils down to two reasons. Number one, to help keep us safe. And number two, to help us avoid discomfort. So that's why we'll have unhelpful thoughts that are just they're pulling us away, because it's like, oh, well, that might happen and this might happen, or you can't do that, you're not good enough to do this. And then to avoid discomfort, even the slightest amount of discomfort that we might experience when we're doing something new, like, oh, I want to just play half a song on the piano, and the mind will come in and go, oh, well, you're not really musical, or not today, and it's what's happening there is the mind is doing its job. It's just doing its job. It's basically going, oh, that might make you feel a bit uncomfortable. I'll give you an excuse so you don't feel uncomfortable, right? And so there's lots of other insights as well that are simply put out. And when we can absorb the ones, particularly the ones that resonate with us, we find that we basically don't take our thoughts so seriously unless they're helpful. And going back, just very quickly, going back to that quote that I said that I often use is, I am not my thoughts unless I choose them. It's because the automatic thoughts in our head, they just happen. They're not your fault. They're not our fault. They just happen. They've been programmed into us from the external world. And this is what Professor Steve Hayes says, one of the most phenomenal psychologists, not only of our time, but ever now, and he's still alive, founder of acceptance commitment therapy. He says, yeah, thoughts have been programmed into us from the external world. You weren't born with the thought, I'm stupid, right? It's like people were not born with those thoughts. So it's when we can look at it like this, it's like it's just the mind is doing its job. It seems like in this moment it's not my friend. It's these random, arbitrary, unkind, judgmental thoughts that kind of come up. They're part and parcel of the functions of survival, and our brains over eons have been programmed this way. So the default mode network and in other words, the automatic thoughts that we do have in this modern world today are they're part and parcel of a human experience, and these so-called modern minds that we've got right here and now haven't actually caught up with the modern world. Because in the modern world today, we just say, oh, that's a negative thought, that's a negative thought. But just a few years ago, they were essential for the functions of survival for eons and eons and eons and eons and generations.
Could that be a way to practice self-compassion as well? Looking at that it's not your fault that these thoughts come up?
Exactly, 100%. And here's the thing which can make it quite beautiful also on the Mindfulness app is the Never Mind Your Mind letters of appreciation. And in that, in each of the days, the 5 days, we explore a metaphor, and then it moves into a letter as though you've written it to your mind, having learned the insights from the metaphor. And what this is about is seeing the mind, recognizing sometimes it's helpful, sometimes you're helpful, dear mind, sometimes you're helpful, sometimes you're unhelpful, but I now know why. So the beautiful thing here is, and it's not just me that's saying this, Kristin Neff, the world's leading researcher on self-compassion, we've got some stuff of hers, right? It's like, com, it, we can have compassion for ourselves for having difficult thoughts and feelings come our way, experiencing difficult thoughts and feelings. We can also have compassion for our mind that is just doing its job. So we often hear in this field anyway, like in terms of this context, about the inner critic, right? The inner critic is a collection of thinking patterns that is, critical of self, others, and the world. But usually when we hear about the inner critic, it's about self. The inner critic, those collection of thinking patterns, the inner critic only knows how to be an inner critic. It
Mm.
it doesn't know another way of going about it. So in its ineffective and counterproductive way, the inner critic is like a 5-year-old with one perspective. It only knows criticism. It doesn't know it doesn't have awareness of itself. It certainly doesn't have self-compassion and empathy, but you do. We do. We have the capacity for that. Now, when thoughts are raining in on us and we're going through a tough time, it's like they're happening to us. But the more we can gently work with these insights and be there for ourselves, which is what self-compassion is, in the throes of hardship and difficult thoughts and feelings, taking some time out for ourselves, even if it's a few seconds, to give yourself some validating self-talk, which is disengaging from the automatic and engaging or re-engaging with intentional self-talk, then we step out of the default mode network. Because like that, I'm kind of using different names here. So I've spoken about the inner critic, and obviously that's part of the default mode network, if that makes sense. But for the
Yeah.
listeners here, if you wanted to keep it really simple, it's like the mind is the thoughts that we experience, right? And we can be aware of these thoughts, and the majority of our automatic thoughts are not helpful, and that's what science shows us. And I go into
Mm.
that science of thinking patterns in the Never Mind Your Mind micro course and the full Never Mind Your Mind course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what to put it in practice when your mind is spiraling in these negative thoughts, what would you recommend to do in that moment to just zoom
Yeah,
out from
definitely.
it?
So look, there's kind of like different degrees of being hooked, or as we say in like psychology, particularly ACT, it's like fused. When we get fused with a thought, like it's we're looking at the world from the thought, like I said earlier, instead of looking at the thought and seeing it as a thought, right? It's not that looking from the thought is bad, by the way, because it's nice to fuse with thoughts of gratitude. It's nice to hook with thoughts of love and appreciation, right? So it's like fusing or hooking is just a process that can help us, but we get to choose. And this is what this is about, stepping back and choosing. So in terms of when you said like people spiraling, or when we're really caught up, if we're not quite at the level of spiraling, there's going to be some simple tools that we can use to unhook and free ourselves from the unhelpful thought. But depending on the degree of being hooked and what we're going through, it's going to start affecting our emotional world, right? So sometimes we might have an unhelpful thought, and once people start doing this work and learning these insights and using the tools, they'll find that thoughts that used to have a punch to them, actually now when they come, they just come and go. They're like a stream of words. It's like, I'm just noticing. So we can have simple tools for those thoughts that don't have so much of a punch. But when you're talking about things like reeling in them, like rumination, and then really, really going through a tough time when we're at a state of feeling overwhelmed, then we need to really come into a place where it's like, this is not just me unhooking from thoughts. This is my body also telling me that I need some self-care. And one of, some of the affirmations that I really love in I Choose Me First, which and This Tough Life, the courses here on the Mindfulness app, is about like, may my difficult thoughts be an indicator that I need some self-care.
Hmm.
May my difficult feelings, or may my difficult thoughts and feelings, instead of happening to me, can they be an indicator that I need some self-care? And if we're up, like you said, spiraling, so if we've got a degree from 0 to 10, if it's like a 7+, we really need to do something that can get us grounded and connected to ourselves. Something that, if we can get to maybe a 7 or a 6 or a 5, then we want to be doing something to soothe the nervous system. And there's tracks here on that for that, right? Soothing the nervous system reset, absolutely essential in this modern world today. And some gentle unhooking skills as well, maybe. And I'm really big on this whole thing about validating self-talk. I really love it. I do cover it in day 4 when we talk about self-compassion and Kristin Neff's 3 pillars of self-compassion. And what I do is I go through those in a really easy way, and I call them the 3 N's. So the 3 N's of self-compassion, which are 3 verbs that we can remember: notice, normalize, and nurture. I won't go into that now, but that basically is the 3 pillars that Kristin Neff talks about, who's the world's leading researcher and has operationally defined self-compassion. It's that structure, but it's just using notice, normalize, and nurture is when we
Could
can
you maybe
see.
give an example? It sounds so interesting.
You want an example?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah. So this is obviously this is good actually, because it does like help with the last question you asked. Okay. So if people do want material on this, day 4 of This Tough Life, it's there, but it's also a single track. I might need to check that, but there's a single track as well if people want that, so we can give that to them. So what this is about is self-compassion. There's like 3 elements to it, and I'm just going to give you very, very quickly here. So and this is Kristin Neff's 3 elements, right? So it's like there's mindfulness, there's common humanity, and there's self-kindness. So mindfulness, number 1, the first pillar, number 1, mindfulness. When we're talking about self-compassion, we hear a lot about mindfulness of the external world all the time. This is mindfulness of our internal world. So this is mindfulness, noticing the difficult thoughts coming in repeatedly, maybe rumination, right? The feelings. I am noticing the thought that I can't cope. I am noticing this energy of anxiety, and it's that verbal mindful commentary that can really help, but also to get to the experience of just being with our inner world. So mindfulness, right? And then common humanity is the recognition. We have to remind ourselves, and we do this with self-talk, about the fact that I'm a human being that makes mistakes. I screw up, I slip up, I'm going through a tough time at the moment, and so do other people. That's common humanity, and it comes with self-talk. All right. And then self-kindness. So what can I bring to mind that is kind for me, or what can I do for me, like a little baby step, like a thing? And that could be something as simple as putting a hand on the heart, right, in that moment. Because if people, and this is generally speaking, if you put your hand on your cheek, or you put your hand on your neck, or your heart like that, and this is, like I said, generally speaking, it's not everyone, but there's going to be certain points where we actually can do that for ourselves, and it's an act of self-care, and oxytocin is released. So let's pause there, because I want to come on to the 3 N's and then pull it all together. So what did we have? We had Kristin Neff's three elements of self-compassion, right? So mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness. Now, this is what I like to do. I like to keep that, but what I like to do is basically use three verbs beginning with N, so it's easier to remember. And so what I've got for mindfulness is notice, because mindfulness is about noticing and allowing. So notice, the three N's, number one. Number two, notice. Normalize. Number two is normalize. And that's the self-talk, the common humanity. Normalize. I know I'm going through a tough time at the moment, and everyone else seems to be having it better than me. But I do know that everyone struggles, and I don't want to trump my pain or get away from it. I want to acknowledge it, and even though I don't want it, I know that this is normal given the circumstances of what I'm going through. So I just give you a bit of, it doesn't have to be that long, but it's that kind of thing if I was to improvise, right? So 1, 2, 3. Number one, notice. Number two, normalize. Number three, what was that? Self-kindness. We have nurture. So nurture, what can I bring to mind right now for me, given the circumstances of what's going on? What can I do for myself, or what can I do for myself? What can I bring to mind? What can I do for myself? Like a little action. So what could that look like? The three N's, right? It could be, and this is what Kristen Neff does, as a really kind of simple micro practice of self-compassion. She pauses, right? Puts a hand on her heart, pauses and notices, puts a hand on her heart and says, this is a moment of suffering. It's raw, it's real. And she just says that statement, right? So that's an example of the three N's in a very quick way, because what happened is you're noticing, here's this difficult thought, here's this difficult feeling, my body's contracted. Hand on heart, that's the self-kindness or the nurturing, and the statement of this is a moment of suffering is the nurturing, the common humanity. So notice, normalize, nurture. You don't have to use the three N's, but I find them helpful, and I know that I've taught them to hundreds, thousands maybe of people. Actually, no, thousands of people.
Yes.
And people relate to it, but it's up to you. If you just do what works, Yeah.
What I really like about that technique, it's so simple. Once you learn it, you have it, and you can practice it in whatever. You can even practice it in a meeting by yourself, just at work.
You can, yeah, exactly. You can do it like kind of quietly. Because you know what, Tekla, this is what the two questions that I pose, and in this tough life, and I choose me first. Two really beautiful courses that kind of have a kind of similar theme in terms of showing up for yourself. Is this? It's like, who is the one person who knows exactly what I have been through, right? And all and what it's like to be me. Who's the one person? And the second question, who's the one person that can be there for myself in any given moment? And the answer is you are. Like I am. I am the one person that knows exactly what it's like to be me. Like, yes, I can speak to people about it, but I'm the one who's had the experiences. I am the one person. And I am the one person that can always be there for myself if I choose to. And that's the if. So there's an if there, because we get hooked up into the mind, especially when we're going through a tough time. The mind ups the ante. So as if that wasn't bad enough, the mind then doubles down and gives us even more thoughts. That means that the tough time's even worse, right? So it's like, knowing that can really help us. It's like, yeah, I'm the one person. I am the one person that knows what it's like to be me, and I'm the one person that can be there for myself. And so we often hear about it, and it does sound cliche in terms of that, can I treat myself like my best friend? And sometimes when people hear that, they're like, oh, it sounds strange, or it sounds a million miles away from how I want to be, because I just don't like myself. When we start to learn these insights, we do start to actually, oh, okay, so this is how it is. And I've been going through this and it's really not fair that my mind is doing that, but my mind is not against me. It's trying to protect me. It's trying to, number one, keep me safe. Number two, help me avoid discomfort in its ineffective and counterproductive way. And so we start to then, find that we start to relate to ourselves differently. We deepen our sense of connection to ourselves, which deepens our sense of connection to other people. And if it affords it in our lives, and that's what we want, it deepens our sense of spirituality.
Yes. That's something I find very beautiful in the Nevermind Your Mind course, because even if it could be looked at negatively, if it's your thought spiraling, you manage to get us to understand how to cope with it and turn it into something that actually gives you joy and good things in life. So it's the Never Mind Your Mind and also this tough life. It's two great courses we have in the app from you that really drills down on this that we've been talking about. And for all of you listening and watching, we will also share it in the description. So you will find it easy in the app. Just wanted to put it out there.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
definitely.
What would
Hello,
you?
everybody.
Yeah.
By the way, hello.
Hello.
Yeah,
But what would you, after taking your course, like Never Mind Your Mind, what would be the
yeah.
most important thing you want people to bring from it?
So once people have like taken the course, like there will be some of these insights that we've spoken about, right? That help us recognize what's going on. It gives us like this sense of wisdom, a deeper sense of wisdom, and a deep and with that comes the compassion for our mind that has been like tripping us up and giving us a hard time. So in terms of in terms of sorry, did you say what people would get from it? Is that what you said?
Yeah, what's the most important thing you think you want people to take away from the course, understand about their minds after taking the course?
Yeah, definitely. So drawing on any of the insights that resonate with you, that then will help you not take your thoughts so seriously unless they're helpful. And with that we have more choice, and that deepens our sense of connection to ourselves. That's almost, like that's a beautiful thing as well. It's like when my mind gives me unhelpful thoughts, I get to choose whether I want to give energy to that. That's a spiritual choice. Okay, so there's a so-called negative thought, and obviously I talk about that in Never Mind Your Mind, but we use the term unhelpful thoughts instead of negative because of the brain's evolved that way, and negative thoughts are part and parcel of how we've evolved, and they serve a function, and that's why they're there. So it's like, yeah, we see them for what they are, and by by choosing not to identify, that's like, yeah, do I want to identify with that? My mind is giving me this, but do I want to identify with it? And the more we do that, the more we learn these insights. What's happened is that over the time, from the people that have given, written the reviews, and people that I've spoken to individually and whatever, basically it's a similar story. People that used to have the thoughts that used to push them around and used to dictate to them, over as they start the course and everything, they start to lose their power. They start to lose their power. And over time, not just learning the insights, but actually having the tools, because that's what Never Mind Your Mind's about. When we get into like day 9 and 10, it's actually the tools for the job. But definitely learn the insights first. Don't just skip to the tools, because the tools won't work as well unless you do the insights. And what people find is that those thoughts that used to bother them are like a stream of words. They don't have the charge. So so-called negative thoughts, I'm not good enough, or I'm stupid, or whatever it might be, actually the same literal content is neutralized. We experience them, but we've changed the way we relate to our thoughts, because it's not your unhelpful thoughts that's the problem. It's not our unhelpful thoughts that's the problem. It's how we relate to them that is the problem. And that's what Never Mind Your Mind is about. And with
That's
the insights
beautiful.
and the tools, that comes into fruition. Yeah.
And also knowing that the unhelpful thoughts will always be there. So you can't just shut them out, but you can learn how to
Yeah, there's no delete button in the brain
No.
for our unhelpful thoughts. Yeah, that's right. And we can go into that maybe another time. But yeah, there's in terms of the neural templates in our brain for whatever we're doing or thinking, we can't delete those neural templates. So there's no delete button in the brain for those thoughts. And if we really don't want to have them, then they'll come back even more. So it's kind of like a rigged game. It's pushing us, it's kind of steering us, should I say, to acceptance, to being okay with our inner world, being okay with our thoughts, even when our thoughts are not okay with us. Because we have the capacity for awareness, we have the capacity for self-compassion and these other attributes, right? The mind, the automatic thoughts in our mind are just that those collection of thinking patterns that are trying to, number one, keep us safe, number two, trying to help us avoid discomfort.
It's a good way of getting motivated to do the work and to explore your inner mind. Like,
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
to.
definitely.
Yeah. I'm so glad you joined us today, Ruben. And I know our whole community loves you, and hopefully
Thank you.
many more will be able to find you after this webinar or podcast session.
Yeah,
I'm going to link to the course, of course, and I hope to speak to you soon again.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, we could do another one with like, tools for the job or whatever. We could also ask, we can ask our community what is it that they want to know or to focus on or whatever, and what questions do they have. Um,
Definitely. That's a
yeah.
great idea.
And we,
Yes.
we do that actually. We have those events now and again, don't we, Tekla? So if anyone wants to join, yeah, it's in the
Some
email that you send, isn't
webinars.
it?
Yeah,
The webinars, yeah,
exactly. We'll for sure make more of them. Yeah.
yeah,
But thank you
absolutely.
so much for your time, Ruben.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Tekla, and
Yeah.
thank you everyone for listening. With your,
Yeah.
your valuable time. I appreciate you.
We appreciate you, Ruben. Take care.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.